Hello, everybody. I had kind of an interesting video come across my recommended feed on YouTube yesterday that I thought might make kind of a cool video to sit here and kind of give my thoughts on to react to. I very briefly watched it, like not the whole thing, watched a few minutes of it just to kind of get a vibe for it, see if it would make some good content to like sit here and react to. But as you can probably see on the screen right now, the title of this is the biology of Subnautica part 1. So there's actually 2 parts to this video. And it's by a channel called Curious Archive that I have had, like I said, kind of in my YouTube recommended, like off and on, seemingly for the last 6 months, year or so maybe. But this one in particular caught my attention because I have played Subnautica. So if you've like watched my streams that I do sometimes, I played Subnautica several months ago. I never actually beat it, but I did like play a few sessions of it. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to stop and see. Of course, I don't consider myself to be a biologist, but I do a lot of biology education. I work in a science museum, and my background's actually in anthropology, but I've been doing kind of more general biology, more kind of zoology stuff for most of my professional career at this point. So I thought maybe, just maybe, I might have kind of a fun perspective on this. And so I think with no further ado, we're going to hop in here. And what it seems like it is kind of just breaking down on like a species by species level. Kind of if you hop into the game of Subnautica, what are the things you're going to encounter as you go deeper and deeper into the game. And so the order that he's kind of going in is seemingly just kind of like, what are you likely to encounter the longer you play the game, kind of in that order. And talking about sort of the niches they fill, the adaptations they have for existing in the world of Subnautica.
The vast oceans of the popular video game Subnautica teem with alien creatures, some friendly and some deadly. While the game focuses on survival, the life forms of Subnautica are amazing even when they're trying to eat you, possessing fascinating biology, bizarre behavioral patterns, and hidden mysteries. So, for this entry into the archive, we'll embark on a documentary-style expedition, touring ecosystems from the shallows to the abyssal trenches, swimming in the shadows of giants and evading predators of the deep. This series will reveal the biology.
Yeah, so one of the things that's kind of interesting about Subnautica is that it's kind of unique among a lot of video games that there is sort of this very specific like research element to it, where like one of the items you get relatively early on in the game is this like scanner, and you can go and you can, scan a thing and get some kind of more information about it, how it exists. So you have this like presumably like objective and like correct like block of information that you get about any given living creature within Subnautica. And so I'm assuming he's going to be relying a lot on that for this. The other thing I think that's just kind of an interesting concept here is it's biology, like in the context of like alien life, I always find very interesting because there's like always this built-in assumption that things are going to be very analogous to things that exist on Earth, and that the like body processes that they're going to be going through are going to be very similar to what exists on Earth. And there's a certain element to like, yeah, that has to be true. Like you have to intake energy and produce waste is something that like, I don't know if there's any situation where that's ever going to not be true. And similarly, I think anytime you have things that are reproducing, there's really no way for like the natural selection and evolution to not also happen. And part and parcel with that is diversification to happen. Anytime you have reproduction, you also have to have speciation that happens. And so ecosystems being kind of like weirdly similar to Earth, even on this like distant alien planet, actually makes a lot of sense because it's like based on things that kind of have to happen regardless of, the specific biology of like, oh, we need a egg cell and a sperm cell to come together. And like, because chromosomes exist, like mutations can happen and create speciation. Like, no, regardless of like, anytime you have a thing reproducing itself, stuff's going to mess up sometimes. And that's how speciation happens. That's what mutations are.
Behind these puzzling life forms and investigate how they differ from life in our own oceans. And although it's been a while since this archivist has done any fieldwork, I'll be diving into the perilous seas of Planet 4546b myself to capture footage of these magnificent life forms. So let's take the plunge together and see what awaits us under the surface. Beginning in the safety of shallow, warm waters, we find that stable conditions have led to a region crowded with varied life. Here you can encounter all manner of undersea organisms. One of the first life forms we can spot are the Peepers, or rather they spot us with their enormous dinner plate-like eyes. These easily identifiable creatures have evolved visual sensors capable of discerning colors not just in clear waters, but in a variety of lighting conditions.
Yeah, and that's something where like there's like a theoretical thing that biologists love to do where it's like, oh, if you started over from square one with like the diversification of species on Earth, like how much would change, what would look different. And one of the things that is generally thought of being a thing that would like probably happen again is you would get not necessarily eyes that are exactly the same, but like some sort of like visual receptor, some sort of light receptor would be like something that would probably happen in pretty much any scenario where like if you were to start life over from square one and let it go. What's interesting about the Peepers is how notably like big their eye is. And, you know, there's not really any indication that they work like meaningfully different than like an Earth thing's eye, like my eye, as far as I know. But what's interesting about the Peepers is they have these gigantic eyes. And typically you see an eye that big, what you're generally going to be associating it with is an animal that lives in relatively low light conditions, but is still relatively dependent on its vision to do things. What I always found weird about the Peepers in this game is that you don't find them in that. You find them in like the shallowest water possible, where light isn't a major issue. And similarly, you see it with like all the other animals in the area where like you can see the fish behind it here like doesn't have noticeably really big eyes, or this guy down here like doesn't have noticeably super big eyes. But the Peepers like weirdly do here for some reason. And the comment he just made was about discerning color in a bunch of different light conditions. But typically you don't necessarily see, like color doesn't necessitate a big eye. You can think of something like a parrot, for example, has a really, really great range of colors that it can see, like a much larger range of colors that it can see than like a human does. But the eyes of a parrot aren't like, you know, they ain't this. The bigness of the eye typically is associated with light conditions, specifically trying to see in low light conditions. Whereas color vision doesn't necessarily have that same association. So I don't know necessarily why the Peeper needs to do this or have this. I said the Peeper was one fish that I was like eager to see what they talked about with it, because I was like, this thing's kind of stupid for the environment that it's in.
This, combined with their surprising speed, means that despite being herbivores, Peepers aren't at the bottom of the food chain.
And one thing I will say is that for things that do see like a really diverse range of colors, oftentimes they are herbivorous, because one of the things it helps with is like making distinctions between different types of plants, like having a really strong ability to like see differences in color is really valuable in that context, because it turns out like, hey, a lot of like berries just like look kind of alike, other than, you know, being vaguely different color shades. And if you eat berry A, you get a nice berry, and if you eat berry B, you get poisoned. So color vision and herbivores do tend to go pretty closely together.
That distinction instead belongs to these creatures, the rather unfortunate-looking Garyfish. Docile herbivores that are remarkably slow, the Garyfish make easy prey for most anything else in these shallow waters. All ecosystems, including the oceans of Earth, need something at the bottom of the food chain after all. Other common herbivores on 4546b include the bladderfish, which swims by contracting and expanding its
I'm going to throw one thing out here for the Garyfish. Weird thing associated with the Garyfish is the like relatively forward-facing eyes. The fact that the eyes are like on... The eyes for the Garyfish are strange for something that is like a bottom of the food chain type of prey item, where one, you have vertical pupils, which you probably wouldn't expect to see. So like the Garyfish, assuming again that the eyes work similar to like the eyes of things on Earth, like the visual like the visual area that this fish can see is like in front of it and like up and down. Like if I was looking at this fish, I would like not assume that it's a predominantly like prey item fish. Typically with prey fish, what you'll see is eyes down on the sides of the head, and with the pupils that you typically see with prey animals or herbivorous animals, even that aren't like super highly preyed upon, is pupils that are actually turned horizontally. So 90-degree turn from what the pupils would be here. So that's the pupils that you see in like goats and horses and stuff, for example, because it gives you a wider peripheral vision, and that tends to be more valuable as far as seeing predators coming and avoiding them, especially if you're something that's like slow like this. Like you need a head start when your predator is coming. And so there might be something here where like the Gary fish is able to like use its kind of eye stalks and like get a wider periphery by being able to like turn the whole eye different directions is maybe a thing, in which case maybe it doesn't need the horizontal pupils for the periphery because it's getting it elsewhere. But just like looking at the model that I'm seeing here, like I don't read like heavily preyed upon herbivore.
It's something at the bottom of the food chain after all. Other common herbivores on 4546b include the bladderfish, which swims by contracting and expanding its translucent bladder, and the unusual boomerang, a horizontally symmetrical oddity that possesses a mouth full of sharp teeth to break down coral.
I guess I'm not 100% sure on this, but I feel like sharp teeth to break down coral doesn't make a ton of sense. Like I would think you would want like flat teeth for coral. They're crunchy. Maybe I'm just wrong on that though, but I said I see sharp pointy teeth like that and I'm like, oh, it's like I grab and I grip and I hold my prey. Not I'm browsing on corals. But I guess I can't necessarily 100% speak to that. Also, I hate to keep harping on eyes, but I don't know why, like what the benefit of having two eyes on one side would be, unless there's also, I guess, two eyes on the other side. Like I could see this if there's four eyes on the thing, but I guess I don't know if there are eyes on the other side. I don't know why you would ever be oriented this way if you were like a free swimming fish, because you just can't see anything coming from the opposite side. I said, assuming that there's not two eyes on the other side.
Possesses a mouth full of sharp teeth to break down coral. On the subject of coral, the landscape of the safe shallows is dominated by one particularly unusual life form. These gargantuan tubes are large enough to swim through, and despite appearances, are very much alive. Aptly named giant coral tubes, they don't look much like the coral we know on Earth. These tubes have evolved to filter nutrients that flow through their center, and judging by their size and abundance, it's a strategy that has been quite successful.
And I remember thinking when I was playing these that I thought these were like a really cool idea. Just a thing that sends a bunch of water through it and just filters whatever comes through, because that's mostly what corals do. And this feels like a pretty decent way of like maximizing your surface area. What I wish they had done a little bit more with these is have more stuff inside the tubes themselves. Like something that like facilitates having more surface area. And this is like part of where like the kind of gaminess comes in to it, where it's like they want you to be able to swim through them. They want you to be able to use them as cover. But like if this thing were to exist in real life, I would expect, you know, like this type of stuff you're seeing kind of on the outside here of them, I would expect to see a bunch of that on the inside, because that would maximize your surface area even more, without really dramatically hampering the water flow that's coming through here.
Gliding near the tubes is the elegant rabbit ray, the first of many ray species we may encounter. The undulating motion that the rabbit ray uses to swim through the clear seas is analogous to the underwater movements of various types of Earth rays. But it's not the movement of the rabbit ray that gives it its curious name. Instead, the rabbit ray's most defining features are its twin orange appendages that help it sense vibrations. These ear-like structures resemble the ears of rabbits.
I guess I can, like, again, if you're a prey item and you know you have predators that are like using sonar basically to find you, like having that type of appendage would probably make you very capable of detecting that as well. So that's probably actually a pretty good adaptation.
And so the aquatic rabbit ray shares a name with an otherwise dissimilar terrestrial herbivore. Beneath the shallow's twisted network of underwater caves. While exploring one as I was gathering this footage, I heard a strange noise.
I'm just going to stop here, and I'm so interested to see what he says about this, because these things are... When I heard the biology of Subnautica, like, this is the thing that I was like, I want to talk about it, and I'm very curious to see what he says about this guy.
Noise. And then a fish exploded in my face. That short-lived creature was a crash fish, an evolutionary oddity that is difficult to study due to its highly frustrating habit of exploding when anything gets close. While an animal exploding to defend its territory might seem too outlandish to evolve, there's a model of such behavior on our own planet. Though uncommon, certain species of ants have been observed erupting into goo to block tunnels when their nest is under threat. Truly, nature is highly unusual, no matter the planet.
This fish is nuts. This fish makes zero sense as a thing that is existing in an environment where reproduction, the way that we think about reproduction, exists. This is a fish that anytime anything comes close to it, it runs out and it kills itself for seemingly little to no benefit of anything else. like the reason this works with ants, like the example that he gave of the ants, is because ants function as like almost like a singular like colony animal. They're almost like bordering on being like what a coral is, where it's like the life of a single ant doesn't matter, because what matters is that the whole colony continues existing. You can kill a bunch of ants and it doesn't matter because there's a billion more ants. Same goes for like bees. Like bees can have like a stinger that kills them upon using it because there's so many more bees, and like what matters isn't the life of a single bee, what matters is the life of the hive. This thing doesn't have that. It seemingly is just like a single fish that just like loves killing itself, which doesn't make any sense. And like, I guess the only way I can maybe think of like how this would maybe function is, one, this isn't the actual organism. Like the actual organism is in fact the like weird little polyp thing that it pops out of. And this is a thing that is like superficially similar to a fish, but is just like a defense mechanism that this thing uses to protect itself from stuff coming up to it. And that this thing is capable of building more of these. You know, this thing isn't a fish that is just like protecting this thing to a suicidal degree for no reason. These two things are one organism, and this thing can make another one of these. It's like, so it goes from being like an animal that is like killing itself like these ants do to being like, you know, this is a skunk and this is the spray kind of thing. It's an adaptation to existing underwater. This is just like a shape that is able to move through the water more so than releasing like a cloud of skunk spray is. The other thing that could maybe be a thing is that there is some sort of like larger symbiotic entity that we like never really deeply see in the game, where like you can think of it as like aspen trees, where it's like you go under the rock and there's like a larger ecosystem of like these things, and these things are similar to ants, where it is like a hive thing, and there's a lot more of these that just like exist deeper than what we ever actually see. That feels unlikely. Like I think theory A there is the one that makes a lot more sense and is a lot more likely, but his theory of the just like this is just a fish that like loves to kill itself, this couldn't exist unless it reproduces like crazy, and we don't see that ever in the game.
Exploding when anything gets close. Elsewhere in the caves, the far less bothersome shuttlebugs drift near the stone walls. Shuttlebugs are challenging creatures to make sense of, with 3 legs and 3 mandibles that have evolved into thin-like tentacles. Despite looking slightly unsettling, analysis suggests shuttlebugs are too small to be a threat to most organisms, and have instead adapted to feed on the waste products of the ecosystem around them.
This thing exists in an area that have like a lot of fish that could like easily be grasped by those tentacles. Like I don't think the size thing is the issue.
Leaving the caves, you'll see our first large species is waiting for us, the Gasopods. These rotund, leathery beasts resemble Earth manatees, yet have a curious defense that is all their own. Although in no way hostile, when threatened, Gasopods will nonetheless release a deadly cloud of underwater mist, which I can't recommend ingesting. Chemical analysis of Gasopods tells us the poisonous compound comes from the bulbous appendage at the end of their tail. Since Gasopods are social creatures, it's even possible they use these clouds to communicate with one another.
That last line rings is kind of weird to me because it would be strange for them to be using something that they use as a defense mechanism as also like a communicative thing, especially when it's like this type of quote unquote weapon. Because presumably there's like a refractory period there. Like you can't just like drop a stink cloud, drop a stink cloud, drop a stink cloud continually without having to like regenerate it. So again, I talked about skunks earlier. Like skunks will go through like a whole rigmarole before they actually spray you because it takes them a while to like build more spray to spray. And so they like will actively try to not use it. Basically, it's a last resort for them because once they use it, they don't have it again for a while. And so that merged, like, I have like a chemical defense that I also use for communication, like, doesn't jive with like any animal on Earth that I know of, and just like generally doesn't make a ton of sense to me unless, like I said, they are able to like generate those like balls that they drop at a extremely high rate to the point where it like doesn't matter. Another good example of an animal that's kind of like this is like snakes with their venom. Venomous snakes generally aren't going to try and like bite something in self-defense because they need their venom to catch food. And so if they bite, if they're biting you, they're depriving themselves potentially of an opportunity to get food later. So they'll generally try and avoid biting you. That's like why rattlesnakes have a rattle. Say, don't make me bite you, please.
But while the Gasopods are the largest creatures in the safe shallows, they're barely the tip of the proverbial iceberg when it comes to Planet 4546b. Venturing into the vast kelp forest, we'll find a radically different environment than the region we just left. Here, light is low thanks to the high volume of creepvine plants, creating a hidden ecosystem just like kelp-heavy regions in Earth's oceans. Here and there, clusters of creepvine seeds cast shadows across the environment like natural floodlights. I
don't know enough about this exact thing to really commentate that deeply on it, but something rings a little strange to me in regards to like the size of the creepvine seed pods relative to like the size of the like plant itself. It feels like they are really big for what they are. It's like the reason you see like big fruits on a lot of terrestrial plants is because it's like dependent on being appealing to animals to come and eat and then spread the seeds via animals. Like that's why they exist. And as far as I remember, you don't really see that in here. So I don't necessarily know why you would, one, have these like giant seed pods on this plant, but also like why they're like bioluminescent as well. Like I don't know what they're necessarily like trying to attract. And again, it's one of these situations where it's like the fact that this is a video game and like you use these seed pods as like a resource and they need to be visible for the player is coming in. And I think we're introducing probably a thing that wouldn't necessarily really exist in a real world environment.
Find myself wondering just what might be hidden among,
because those are expensive. Like building a big fruit like that is expensive. And like I said, if you don't have any benefit from it, that's not a thing that's going to exist.
among the swaying fronds. That is a stalker, the largest predator that makes its home in the dense creep vines. These fearsome customers possess a series of dorsal ridges to help them make tight turns, and their long, thin snout is likely adapted for ensnaring fish, as it greatly resembles the effective, slender snouts of real-life gharials. Yet at the edge of the kelp forest, one stalker is behaving rather oddly. This stalker is picking up various pieces of scrap metal with its snout, only to drop them after a short period. This behavior seems to serve no practical purpose, and indeed the stalkers seem to simply have a fondness for shiny objects.
You do see this with some animals in the real world, the like affinity for like reflective things or shiny things. And typically it's an adaptation that is associated with like the prey items they take being sort of reflective. So like you see it with fish, for example. This is why I like a lot of like fishing baits are kind of weird and reflective, because a lot of fish are sort of weird and reflective when they are in the right light. And so predatory fish are like adapted to like seek that reflectiveness and like go and attack it. Similarly, like a lot of like insect carapaces are kind of reflective in the right light. So that's why you see like birds that are kind of into it sometimes.
Puzzling as this behavior might seem, however, the barracuda, a predatory earthfish, is also known to be attracted to shiny objects because it's evolved to spot the silvery glint of the fish it prefers to prey on. And when one considers the common prey of the stalker, this attraction to shiny materials makes perfect sense. In the murky depths of the kelp forest, schools of fast-moving hoopfish light up the dark with their vibrant coloring. A brief study of hoopfish anatomy reveals they get their name from their antennae, which extends from the top and bottom of their heads and bends around their tails, forming a hoop. Exactly why these stunning fish possess such intense and varied colors, however, is a mystery.
I don't know why the mystery is why they're colorful rather than why their like antenna and tail situation is so buck wild. Like it's one continuous thing that starts at the head, like becomes the tail, and then goes all the way around. Like this thing functionally like doesn't have a tail. Like you can see, I mean, presumably you can see like the vertebra of it like going all the way down. It stops at not a tail, and then instead the like antennae become the tail. I wonder if is there some sort of sensory benefit to like having these antennae be like part of the stuff that is like ambulatory for it. So think about like a snake tongue. When a snake's sticking its tongue out, it's got to kind of flick it around a little bit to like collect, you know, more of the stuff that's floating around in the air before it brings it into its mouth. And there's like a benefit to that. I wonder if that's like a similar situation here with the tail on this thing.
Heads and bends around their tails, forming a hoop. Exactly why these stunning fish possess such intense and varied colors, however, is a mystery. On the subject of mysteries, the last fish of the kelp forest we'll see is quite the enigma. Meet the hoverfish, a peaceful herbivore that appears to hover on pads at the end of its 6 legs.
This thing has nostrils, which is interesting. Also, like obviously, like is sort of just like amphibian in appearance, but I like just kind of noticed that now. I haven't been paying like attention to the other ones. The other fish that we've seen have nostrils like that.
Using these strange appendages, the hoverfish glides on the undersea currents in a manner quite dissimilar to any other fish on the planet. It's surprising to learn, therefore, that the hoverfish may actually be a distant relative of the nondescript bladderfish, with their legs actually a highly derived form of the bladderfish's primitive
Yeah, no nostrils.
vacuole tubing. It's the kind of creature that could only exist
Nostrils there either, I don't think.
in the kelp forest.
Although I will say I really do like that method of locomotion where, you know, you have these things that are seemingly kind of individually just like ambulating around to keep it on a relatively steady plane as it kind of drifts around. It seems like it's probably this thing either is probably really energy intensive or it does not have very much control over where it goes. Would probably be the situation it's in real life, because if you're like having to move all of these things enough to like actually control yourself in the current, like I said, that probably feels pretty energy intensive. I said, or you do like the jellyfish type of thing where it's just like, yeah, these things exist to like keep me upright the end, and I just like let the currents take me where they're gonna take me.
Just beyond the waving creep vines, the landscape gives way to an alien grassy plateau. Here, the sandy terrain is almost completely carpeted with bloodgrass, as the seafloor is too dense for creep vines to take hold. And in the open space, even larger life forms are on the prowl. At the edge of the grassy plateau, a strange cloud of sand is gathering. As we swim closer to the unexpected turbulence, a creature with a huge fanged mouth lashes out. This is a sand shark, a predator with a distinctive hunting strategy. The sand shark burrows into the sand, then erupts out when unsuspecting prey swims by, ending the chase with a snap from its massive jaws. With segmented body armor and 6 rows of fearsome teeth, it's little wonder why these predators are so effective. And alien as their behavior might seem, some sharks on Earth employ a similar strategy in swimming along the sandy floor near the shoreline in search of food, although they of course don't possess the extreme tunneling abilities of the sand shark.
Okay. Couple things on this one. I mean, there's the obvious element of like this thing is weird because it's got these weird like kind of very arthropod like armor plates on it. But that can just be like weird alien stuff, whatever. Things that are weird about this. It's an animal that like buries itself in the sand, but then has like these big fins on top. I guess a dorsal fin or a caudal fin, I guess you'd maybe call that. Also, eyes way out on the side of its head, rather than eyes that are like oriented upwards like you would expect. These eyes aren't doing anything for it when it's underground. Like there's no situation where it's buried where these eyes are even like seeing things. The other thing that I thought was kind of weird about these things is that, you know, maybe we can get a view of the inside of its mouth.
This is a sand shark, a predator with a distinctive hunting strategy. The sand shark burrows into the sand, then erupts out.
Because like this that it's doing here, where it's just like jumping out and just like ripping around with all of this energy, all of this just like snapping, is really weird. Because there are animals that like do this, that just like chill on the bottom of the ocean and like ambush stuff that comes by. It's weird that he picked like, you know, this type of shark as like the example kind of parallel. But there are like a bunch of different types of sharks that will like lay on the bottom like this, but what they rely on when they're actually hunting is they don't come out and have like, you know, this mouthful of like goofy like snapping teeth where they're like relying on like their bite force to kill things. Basically they have like a very big mouth, and when they jump out they open their mouth really quickly. It creates this like vacuum situation and just sucks stuff in, and then they just close their mouth around it. And so they don't have, you know, this situation where they're like actually jumping out of the water and then trying to like chase stuff around, because at that point, like, why are you bothering with all the like burrowing stuff if you're actually having to like run your prey down anyway? It like doesn't make any sense really. And then also I was interested in the inside of the mouth, something that like I noticed, and get a halfway decent look at it here, as you can see there's like several rows of teeth, and they go like way back deep into the mouth. And again, when I see that, I don't think of an animal that's like a chompy, bitey animal. I think of an animal that's like a grab and hold kind of animal. And I said the behavior of this thing doesn't really seem to match that. Like I remember seeing these things when I was playing through the game and thinking they like didn't make a whole lot of sense. And this guy has not changed that opinion really.
Prey with siggers or sharks on Earth employ a similar strategy in swimming along the sandy floor near the shoreline in search of food, although they of course don't possess the extreme tunneling abilities of the sand shark. A common target of the sand shark's brutal ambushes swims overhead. The spade fish doesn't look like much from most angles, but glimpse one from above and you'll spot its defining feature, a single cyclopsian eye. Closer analysis of the spade fish suggests it feeds on the sea floor, and its single eye allows the spade fish to spot predators above it.
Yeah, that makes sense if you are a thing that like spends a ton of time on the bottom, that you would have eyes on the top, which is what I was just saying about the sand shark. Like, why are its eyes down on the side if it's like a thing that sits on the bottom all the time and is looking up? Doesn't make any sense. Interesting that he's like, yeah, this thing exists like down on the seafloor, but like the footage we see of it is it like free swimming kind of in the middle of the water column and talking about how one of its main predators is this like sand-based like ambush predator that comes from underneath it.
But glimpse one from above and you'll spot its defining feature, a single cyclopsian eye. Closer analysis of the spade fish suggests it feeds on the sea floor, and its single eye allows the spade fish to spot
and also the placement of the mouth on this is kind of weird. Like, I would like this design a lot if like I said, behaviorally it's an animal that like you actually saw like way down on the seafloor. Also put the mouth on the bottom, like give it like a sturgeon mouth where it is just like cruising around, just like, you know, sucking on gravel for whatever it happens to find in there. But they give it this like big, weird, like sharp tooth, like carnivore mouth. And then, like I said, have it just like swimming around in the water column like anything else.
Predators above it. Its mottled green coloration suggests it normally hides among seagrasses, like many fish do on Earth. When a spadefish wanders onto the grassy plateaus, however, it is hopelessly exposed. On the far side of the grassy plateau, what appear to be tiny floating islands hang miraculously in the water. Upon closer inspection, these chunks of rock are all supported by colonies of the same curious life form. These islands hang miraculously in the water. Upon closer inspection, these chunks of rock are all supported.
I'm trying to see the other side of the spadefish to see if it has eyes on it.
In the water. Upon closer inspection, these chunks of rock are all supported by colonies of the same curious life form. The floaters.
I don't think we're gonna get it.
Transparent gelatinous blobs, floaters are at once oddly beautiful and slightly silly looking. Analysis of these creatures reveal they're actually multiple microorganisms living in symbiosis, which we can compare to some deep-sea species of jellyfish. The floater's ability to suspend heavy objects, however, remains something of a mystery.
I don't, and again, maybe this is just me not knowing about a thing, but I don't know of any like jellyfish species that are like symbiotic, like colony animals like that. Like there are cnidarians that are that, but as far as I know, none of them are like considered to be jellyfish. Like obviously like corals are that.
Yeah. Swimming close by the floating islands is a distant relative of the peeper called the Reginald. The entire back end of these oddly named fellows is composed of one large fin, and that fin's bright coloration appears to be part of a mating ritual. While it swims, the Reginald filters algae and other plant-like material from the water via 4 gill-like forward-facing orifices. While this is a noteworthy adaptation, something looming behind the Reginald demands our attention.
Yeah, and I remember thinking that these things were kind of a cool one. Like I like that kind of weird mouth structure. That's a thing that like feels very alien to me, but also like feels feasible. The thing that like makes less sense to me about this is that, again, it's like a weird free swimming thing. Like if you're eating algae, like there are like floating algae blooms, but like algae is more often than not going to be like growing like on a thing. Like take these mouth parts and put them on some sort of like goofy crab thing that like chills in the bottom, or put them on your the spade fish, the one that had the eye on top, and I think it makes a lot more sense. If you're going to be free swimming like this, like typically what you're going to be seeing instead is like a big old fatty mouth on it that you can just like swim around and like have your mouth open and like let stuff fall into it, basically, especially if you're going to be something that's really like slow and like not good at moving like this thing is. It's weird. It'd be weird to see something like this in our world, because if you're like, this tail is terrible for swimming, and you notice it like doesn't even have like fins on the side. Like this thing can't really steer itself. It can't move very quickly. It's the like obvious parallel to this in the real world would be something like an ocean sunfish. But ocean sunfish are able to do what they do by virtue of being gigantic and just like not really having very many predators. This thing is not that. Like this thing is a thing that like any predator would just like hop on, and like it has no recourse at all.
This is a noteworthy adaptation. Something looming behind the Reginald demands our attention. In the abyss beyond the edge of the plateau, the largest organism we've yet to glimpse calls out through the deep. This is a reefback, a Leviathan-class organism that exceeds lengths of 220 feet or 70 meters and is, thankfully, quite friendly. Swimming closer to these gentle giants, we can see they're unlike any life form we've yet to glimpse. Possessing a thick exoskeleton, their shells have become an oasis of life. Adult reefbacks can support many ecosystems on their back, including many types of coral and small fish. And nearby this adult is a baby, a much smaller creature whose shell is not yet ready to support an ecosystem like its parents. I confess I
remember thinking these things were super cool when I was playing through too, because I like the idea of the thing that's just like big enough and like kind of slow enough for stuff to just like start growing on it. Because that's a thing that like you do see in the real world too. I mean, you get stuff that'll latch on to larger organisms, especially stuff that, like I said, doesn't move very quickly. The last comment he made about the younger reefback, like its shell not being ready to grow stuff, I don't necessarily know where that comes from, because that thing is also gigantic, even as a baby. Like, just because it like doesn't have stuff growing on it yet doesn't mean that it's like couldn't. I would associate that with more like it's young and it hasn't had time for stuff to start growing on it, than like it's not ready for it.
I spent some time just watching these creatures drift in their pods and listening to them call out to each other with complex sounds that suggest a surprising amount of intelligence.
Taking that type of noise and like associating it with intelligence, personifying in a way that probably would, like, if you're writing this up as a like an academic like journal article, would probably catch you some flack on that. Not saying they necessarily aren't intelligent or can't be intelligent, but that certainly isn't enough to be like, ooh, these things are highly intelligent.
With the sun now getting low, it's time to venture deeper into the abyss and enter the foreboding final biome of the dunes. In this vast, empty expanse, life often flocks near hydrothermal vents. These great fissures on the sea floor release a rich chemical soup into the water, much like those that support life in the depths of Earth's oceans. But it's not life among the vents that concerns me. A terrifying roar comes from above. A Reaper Leviathan strikes out into the abyss. This aggressive apex predator possesses 4 mandibles at the front of its maw to drag in large prey, and at 180 feet or 55 meters in length, a hungry Reaper Leviathan can take down almost anything. Analysis of the organism's biology suggests the roar emitted by a Reaper is a form of sonar, meaning if you can hear it, the Reaper can see you. Thankfully, it seems this Reaper isn't hungry. And as I watch the deadly Leviathan vanish into the darkness, I realize I've done enough field work for the day. The sun has now set on 4546b, yet the wonders of this planet continue, as in the low light, various regions of the sea are transformed by stunning displays of bioluminescence. Even the reefback pod from earlier is now giving off a striking glow. This eerie beauty suggests there are many hidden wonders we have yet to see. We'll venture further into the depths in part 2 of the biology.
Okay. We're going to go back to the Reapers here. One of the things that is very interesting with the Reapers is like the scale of them. He said it's, what, like 150 feet long or something like that. So this is an animal that is bigger or at least longer than like any animal that has ever existed on Earth. And what's interesting about that is this is a thing that is like actively a like hunting and chasing predator. This would be something that would be so hard to maintain, just because like it has to be such a successful hunter to actually maintain that mass the way that it exists. Because like if you're like a kind of chase down predator like the Reaper Leviathans are, like you're expending a ton of energy doing that. And so you typically aren't going to be seeing like obligate carnivore, like chase down predators that are like of this scale, just because like the amount of food you have to be consuming, like I said, just to maintain the body mass and the energy needs is way more than what you're probably ever going to realistically catch. And as far as I know, we like don't see these things ever like the obvious thing I would expect this something like this to be hunting would be things like the reefback leviathans, where it's like I need to kill lots of these things and be eating them. Like it's a big slow prey on them. But as far as I know, they like don't hunt them really. Like I don't know if it's ever made like super abundantly clear what the Reaper Leviathans actually eat in this world. But like this thing can't sustain itself on, you know, the Reginalds and the Peepers and whatnot. Again, like assuming something resembling like Earth body processes is going on here. That like found them to be a really like weird thing for a game that like seemingly kind of like put a lot of thought into like these ecosystems and how they would work. Like having a predator like of this scale that operates the way it does is weird. And like at the times where we have had like the biggest like aquatic predator that we have in the oceans today are like great white sharks, things that operate this way. And great white sharks peak at, you know, maybe 25 feet, something like that is about as big as they like ever get, if they even get that big. But there have been bigger sharks in the past. Nothing anywhere near the scale that these things are. What those big things in the past, you know, things like your megalodons and whatnot, they were traditionally they hunted like smaller whales is what they went after. We don't really like have that in this game. Like there's a weird like size scaling in this game where you have a bunch of fish that are, you know, this big, and then you have a bunch of fish that are like vaguely like human sized, if not a little bit bigger. And then you have stuff that is bigger than any animal that's ever existed on Earth. And there's like nothing in between. So like I think one of the like missing elements of this is a actual like viable prey item for the Reaper Leviathans. And again, like it's a video game. There's a certain point where like, hey, we want like a big scary thing looming out in the distance for you to like be afraid of. But, you know, you could have also thrown in some kind of like 40, 50 foot long, like big, slow, stupid herbivore to like be the thing that these guys eat. But anyway, I've been going for almost an hour at this point on this 15-minute video. So thank you for watching. I will probably do a similar react to part 2 of this relatively soon here, so keep an eye out for that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you when I see you.